pandemic and committed to an immediate emergency extraordinary summit of heads of state on the Mali crisis.
Mr. Speaker, this is the first time since the outbreak of COVID-19 that the Ecowas Parliament is having an in-person session, and rightly so. COVID-19, nevertheless, is still with us, and its impact very visible, even amongst us, with the wearing of face masks and maintaining distance from one another. The number of people who have contracted the virus globally has passed the 100 million mark, with 3 million deaths, including some 6,000 of our citizens in Ecowas. This disease has had adverse effects on all aspects of development. It has succeeded in wiping out the relative economic progress recorded by our region over the past decade. And with most of our economies still largely dependent on the production and export of raw materials, we're witnessing a drastic reduction in the prices of commodities because of the contraction in global demand. Africa, and particularly our region, have seen mercifully a relatively favorable picture in terms of mortality rate as compared to other parts of the world. We should continue to thank Almighty God for his continuing mercies. We must, however, continue to remain vigilant in the face of this virus and its multiple invariants. And that is why we must continue to encourage our populations, regardless of their sensibilities, to respect the protective measures and get vaccinated so we can guarantee a rapid return to normalcy. We are at the same time hopeful that together with the international community, we will very soon be able to make the vaccines available to all in West Africa in order to ensure a coordinated and effective end to this pandemic. We must nevertheless encourage countries within our community, like Senegal and Ghana, that have taken steps to develop the capacity to produce their own vaccines, and others within the larger African Union to this end, so that we can more effectively deal with future pandemics and not be dependent on foreign supplies and benevolence for the protection of our people. In this respect, Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to see that you and your colleagues continue to stress the need for West Africa's leaders, stakeholders, and indeed the entire world to tackle collectively COVID-19 through increased vaccination and other interventions. We either succeed together or we perish together. Mr. Speaker, in addition to this health crisis, our other great preoccupation must be the fight against terrorism, which is afflicting our region and the world. Despite our best efforts at dealing with this menace, there are persistent attempts to destabilize several countries of the community through attacks on state symbols, civilian populations, and military bases, as has been the case recently in Niger, Mali, Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, and right here in Nigeria. We are all agreed that peace and security, as well as safeguarding the democratic institutions of member states, are today a major challenge for our region. We cannot sufficiently reiterate the importance of peace and stability to the growth and development of our region. It is important that we consolidate our efforts in rooting out terrorism and threats of terrorism in West Africa. Apart from our people living in constant fear and uncertainty, we cannot expect to attract the requisite levels of investment should this state of insecurity persist. We must take more rigorous and coordinated measures to ensure that we end terrorism in the community. In the same vein, we must pay equal attention to bringing an end to the insecurity in our maritime space in the Gulf of Guinea, which is today the greatest hotbed of piracy in the entire world. This is not a reputation we deserve, and we must work together urgently to change the narrative. Mr. Speaker, it is well acknowledged that Africa is a blessed continent. Our region in particular is one of the major reservoirs of the richest natural resources in the world. Nevertheless, the preconditions for their development, as I have mentioned earlier, peace and security, but also those of democracy and good governance. It is thus critical that you, parliamentarians, endeavor to undertake programs and activities that will help curb the scourge of terrorism, insurgents, banditry, and piracy. The community expects you to use your relations to help attain the desired results. The climate crisis is also wrecking lives and livelihoods and disproportionately affecting the poor and the most vulnerable in society. It is a challenge we must not only confront head-on, but from one which we must emerge as victorious. It is vital that we in the community are united in action and scale up the solutions that deliver green jobs and resilient livelihoods. I cannot make this speech without referring to the unfortunate developments in one of our member states, that of Mali, in which Ecowas has invested so much of its political and material capital. My instinct, though, is that we should call an immediate extraordinary emergency summit of the authority, which was responsible for ironing out the transitional arrangements, to decide on the way forward for Ecowas and Mali. The community will be kept fully apprised of developments on this issue. Mr. Speaker, I must perforce comment also on border closures within the community. We must do our best to keep our borders open at all times to advance the integration objective. Closures impede the free movement of peoples and goods, which affect livelihoods. For us to enhance our fortunes, however, and make the gains from the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCTFA, beneficial for all, we must ensure that our borders do not become instruments of retrogression, especially now that our economies are dwindling due to multiple socioeconomic challenges as occasioned by COVID-19. It is wholly understandable that member states have concerns relating to the spread of the deadly virus, illegal movement of arms, ammunition, and drugs, and uncontrolled transhumance incursions. Notwithstanding, I call on all of us to find systemic measures to tackle these changes rather than temporary measures that can create further hardships for our people.
Other issues bordering on gender equality, regional integration, COVID-19, and security situation in the region reverberated at the opening session.
Over the past years,